How you doing, huh?
How are you?
Is that a, do you have a lapel mustache?
How are you?
Here, and we'll start out with a opening prayer and ending this group. Let me get out of here. Now that works. Let's pray. Our Father, what a beautiful day it is. We praise you for the beauty of the surroundings and for the opportunity of gathering with supporters of this children's home. We thank you so much that you've given us a beautiful day, and all of these plans and the work has come together to end in this opening ceremony and opportunity to view the product of the work of many. Help us to always realize our responsibility for taking care of those who are in need, especially the children. And we're thankful for all those who have gone before us and have provided this home for many years and cared for thousands of children. We just pray that with these new facilities, we'll be able to continue to care for them even better and to point them in the right direction, mean much to their future, not only on this earth, but in eternal life. We thank you for Jesus, for the love he had for us and for the examples he set for us, caring for others and loving others. Help us to do the same thing, and help us as members of his church to work together, not only to support children's homes, but in all the other ways that we need to be working together, spreading the gospel throughout the world. Be with those who are involved in directing this program today. Help the ones who oversee the children, and most of all, bless the children that are living here now and will be living here in the future. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Those who do not know me, I'm Bill Flanagan. I'm chairman of the board. And on behalf of the staff of Curly Children's Home, the church in Claremore, I want to tell you that we appreciate you being here today, because this is a true partnership of effort and a changing the environment from where these kids have spent their time, and changing it to a beautiful setting like we have today compared with what they've had in the past. So we really appreciate you, because without you, this would not be happening today. And so I'm going to introduce Bill Hambrick, and then he'll introduce our speaker.
We really appreciate you being here. I realize the weather's not the greatest. It could have been a lot worse. Could have been pouring down rain or all. But we realize that you made a special effort to come and to be here today, and we want you to know just how much we appreciate it. Bill asked me to introduce the remainder of the board, also the trustees of the home. I'm going to begin there. First of all, you know, without the trustees or the elders of the Central Congregation in Claremore, this project could never have been a reality. Turley Children's Home could never have made a move. And they, with the wonderful cooperation of the elders of the 10th and Rockford Congregation, who for a decade had served as the directors of the home, this cooperation made possible being able to have a day such as this. I'm going to, lest I is one of the trustees. Help me on the rest of them.
Leon Warren. Where's Leon? Leon Warren.
Leon's right behind you. Leon Warren, trustee. Oh boy,
Where's Grady King? Grady here?
I don't think so.
some of our trustees were not able to be here.
Mike is down directing traffic.
Right. Okay, Mike Critchfield.
Reese is in
Man-
Arkansas.
Okay. So we have some, okay, now our board members who are here. Bill Flanagan's already introduced himself. Well, this is tough, James. This is worse than introducing you. Trying to look through this crowd. Yes, probably the very next board meeting. Board members, hold up your hands, would you? Okay. That really, okay. I'm going to introduce it's hard to call them old, but they're not necessarily older, but our board members who are presently serving, and then in the beginning of the 1st of July, they're additional board members. Ted Jones, walking right down here, and help me out some more.
Gerald Allen?
Gerald Allen. Gerald will never forgive me. I know there are other board members. I've seen them. Where are they?
Roger Brock.
Brock is, I don't believe he's here. R.B. Threadgill, I don't believe was able to be here. Ed Daniel, another board member, was not able to be here. Who have I missed? Jim Hinckley? Okay. Ed says I have the important ones, so I'm voting him.
Got the new ones.
Okay, new board members. First of all, I want our new board members to be coming on the 1st of July. Grade from Bartlesville. Okay, any more new board members here? Some were not able to make it. Jim Caldwell from Eureka Springs, Arkansas will be on the board, effective July 1. Also, Gene Milligan. Where's Gene? Come on down, Gene. Gene Milligan from Crosstown Corner. He'll be on the board from Muskogee. Have I missed someone? These are 3 of the 6 new board members who will be coming on the 1st of July. Let's give all of these people a hand. I've had a lot of difficult things to do, but trying to pick people out of the crowd and introduce them, that has to be it. There's one other, or actually 2 groups, I also want to acknowledge now. First of all, our staff at Turley Children's Home, and they're so scattered, I'm not going to try to introduce them. But they have done yeoman work in trying to get all this together. And I really appreciate them. I've had to be gone a lot. And I've had all sorts of unexpected things happen. As James Boughton can tell you, an administrator has happened to them about the time they need to be on the job. And the staff has really done an outstanding job. I'd like for us to acknowledge our staff. That includes our house parents, child care workers, because they're where the rubber meets the road, as well as our counseling staff and administrative and clerical staff. Also, our ladies from the ladies organization have done an outstanding job, and I think, in fact, I know some have made possible the refreshments and such, and we want to acknowledge the hard work they've done. I'll leave this up to Bill later to say a word or two, but we've had so many individuals from different congregations who've worked hard to get the extra furniture and just so many other things. It could never have been done without such an outstanding job say no more and introduce our speaker. He sent me, I don't know why you did this. You think I was going to do all this? Oh, okay. No. I have known and appreciated James Balcom for at least a decade. He's been the executive director at Children's Home Incorporated in Perryville, Arkansas for 10 years. And even though I think it was an outstanding children's home before he arrived, I believe, and I say this in all sincerity, James has made children's homes one of the premier children's homes in our brotherhood and also in this whole part of the country. That program is highly respected in child care circles. And it hasn't been an accident. I realize he's had to have a lot of help, but James has done a tremendous job. He has a very interesting background. I'll just mention 2 or 3 things. He's been a house parent, resident manager, social worker, director of child and family services, in total at the children's home for 22 years. But he also has been a family counselor, a preacher, a teacher. I don't know how you found time to be in the U.S. Navy, but he found most times. He's married. His wife Charlene is here, and he may want to introduce her. That's up to him. 5 children, 11 grandchildren, and I'm already jealous of him. I'm not quite up to that point. James has his bachelor's degree from Arkansas State University and a master's in social work from the University of Denver. He's a member of a lot of professional organizations, but among the ones I think most significant, at least to me, since 1974, he's been a member of the Arkansas Child Care Facility Review Board, which is like our child care committee in Oklahoma that I happen to be a member of. And it takes some tenaciousness sometimes to stay on that kind of a facility, or that kind of a board, rather, or organization for that period of time. He's a member of the Greene County Department of Human Services Board, has been a member since 1993, past president of the Arkansas Association of Homes for Children, past chairman of the Christian Child and Family Services Association, a brotherhood organization, or an organization, Brotherhood Homes, and many other things I could talk about. But I want to hear James and quit listening to myself. James Balcom.
Well, I'm delighted to be here. Sure wish that fellow you introduced could be here too, but he couldn't show up. It is a delight for me to be invited to be your speaker at this occasion and opening up your new facilities. It's always exciting when children's homes are growing and expanding and improving. And sort of reminds me of the time when a fellow had ordered a floral arrangement to send over to a friend of his who was opening up a new business on the other side of town. And he decided later on that afternoon he'd go by and see how the new business was doing. As he got there, instead of a floral arrangement, there was a wreath on the door. Oh, he was upset, and he called that florist, and he chewed him out, and he said, listen, if you think that's bad, he said, somewhere, someone in this city has been buried today, and he's lying under a floral arrangement, says, best to you in your new location. so I would say best to you in your new location out here. Charlene told me on our way over here, and don't try to be witty and don't try to be intelligent, just be yourself. So, that's pretty much what you're going to get today. Charlie and I have had a wonderful experience in child care. We went to the children's home in 1965 as house parents. We got up one morning with no children, went to bed that night with 9. Now that'll change your life. Style. Nothing's been the same since. And well, subsequent to arriving, we had 9 kids, and then we had 10, and then 2 more made 12, and a house built for 8. And so we went to graduate school in Denver, and we decided, well, 4 of those little kids needed to go with us because they were preschoolers, and we'd become fairly attached to them. So we took those 4 with us. Ultimately, we adopted those 4 children. Now we have 11 grandchildren. And I want to take about an hour to talk about each one here. I asked a man not too long ago if I told him about my 11 grandchildren. He said, no, and I really appreciate it. And some of you will identify certainly with that comment. But it is good to be here, to see you, and I'm so delighted to see the number of supporters you have here today, and board members, and trustees. And I will be talking about some material today that I believe you need to hear. Now, it's not what I would call motivational, but it is realistic, because we today are living in a time when there's an anti-child spirit loose in our land. We just don't much like kids as we used to. And so, if I can find my notes here and keep sort of on track, we'll be through in about 4 hours, Bill. Let me just quote for you a little poem most of you remember. Rock-a-bye baby in the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock. When the bough breaks, the cradle will fall, and down will come baby, cradle and all. This childhood poem tells a story about the state of affairs of millions of American children today. The wind is blowing strong. The cradle is rocking. The bough is breaking. Childhood for literally millions of children is falling to the ground in America. And it's not just poor kids. This is rich kids, middle-class kids, poor kids. I believe all are finding it very difficult in our life today. And they're dealing with risk and neglect and abuse on a scale totally unimagined in years past. We're dealing with problems of poverty. We're dealing with problems of children having children, of out-of-wedlock births, of absentee parents, of abandoning fathers, drugs and abuse on a scale we couldn't even imagine this years ago. In 1965, when we came to Paragould, and those 12 kids we had, they were homeless, they were hurting, they were lonely, they were starving sometimes, literally starving, and just didn't have much, but they were not what I call the abused child. We saw very little of actual physical or sexual abuse in those kids, and today that's totally different. But the problem's reaching deep into the mainstream. It's no longer just in Kansas City or Oklahoma City or Tulsa. It's in Claremore, it's in Paragould, it's in all these towns today. The problem's reaching deep into the mainstream, and it is us as well as them. And if you survive the womb, which about 1.5 million will not survive this year, then your chances of survival is a lot more perilous than it ever has been in the history of America. In the words of a 1990 National Commission, it said this: never before has one generation of American children been less healthy, less cared for, less prepared for life than their parents were at the same age. And a recent study by the United Nations showed that the lives of children is actually improving in almost every nation of the world except for two, the United States and Great Britain. Something has happened in America. We just don't much like kids anymore. We used to like to think of ourselves as a child-centered nation. We even boasted that our children were provided and cherished at a level just unmatched throughout the world, that we gave them opportunities more than any other children throughout the world. We even bragged about spoiling, and some of you grandparents, of course, still brag about that. We spoil our kids, we say. But as some of us who are much more involved in what's happening to children, we really look beyond the scenes, we see a lot less comforting reality. Because over the last 30 years in particular, since the early 1960s, when Roe versus Wade came on the scene, and when the Supreme Court ruled that it's okay to kill babies in the womb, and about the same time we decided you couldn't study the Bible or have prayer at school, and I was teaching about that time. Never will forget a little country school out in Truman, Arkansas called Central. And each morning we started the class or the day with Bible reading and prayer. And then came down the instructions, you can't do that anymore. And I went to our superintendent, who was a very devout Baptist, and I said to Curry Coker, I said, Curry, what are we going to do? Curry said, we're just going to keep on. We're going to keep on like coming here with guns and make a stop. And I know Curry well enough to know that he continued that for a long time, but as you well know, that was also outlawed eventually. There is an anti-child spirit loose in our land. There's been an alarming weakening in a fundamental assumption long held dear to the hearts of Americans about its children, and that was that children were to be loved and valued at the highest level of priority. We've now reached the stage when we're not valuing children, we are now devaluing children. We spend in our country $10 for adult needs versus $1 for children's needs. Now in Mark the 10th chapter, verses 13 through 16, you find the occasion where they brought some young children to Jesus, and his apostles, thinking they were doing the right thing and thinking that they understood what Jesus was all about, said in a modern-day James Malcolm translation of that verse, "Get out of here! Get those kids away from here! The Lord don't have time for children!" And that's what they thought. Well, today our society is saying almost the very same thing. we don't have a lot of support for children's needs in this country, and we don't have a lot of support for children's needs in the Church of Christ. Irrespective of what some of you may be doing individually and or congregationally, we only spend about 1% of our total income in the Church of the Christ for the needs of children, folks. In a lot of congregations, it's extremely low. There needs to be a re-evaluation of what we esteem about children. Why do we not care? Why do we not pay attention? Because they are sometimes noisy, sometimes they're boisterous, sometimes they're disruptive, sometimes they get in the way, sometimes they're ugly, and their behaviors, maybe even physically. But what's happened is, as a child growing up on a cotton farm in Truman, Arkansas, my hands was needed. Daddy needed my hand to chop that cotton, pick that cotton, pull those poles, run the cattle, fix fences. We don't much need kids for that kind of stuff anymore. I.e., they have therefore become a problem in our society. But there is this anti-child spirit loose in our land. If you don't believe that, look at the 35 million babies that have been killed in the womb since the early 1960s. And let me ask you, where were you? Where were you individually in this? When this started, what did we do? How come religious people of all stripes, how come we didn't just absolutely revolt? Now, you revolted us, but how come we didn't absolutely revolt? How come we didn't go to our state and federal legislators and say to them, change the law? This is not right. This is anti-scriptural. This is not what God would have us. How come we didn't do that? How come we just sit mute and mute and still and silent and never raised our voice? Tell me sometime. I want someone else to explain to me why we didn't just absolutely throw a fit, and why we didn't throw out some state and federal legislators and put some people in there who would at least be biblical in their understanding. If you don't believe there's an anti-child spirit, how come we have over 3 million children being reported to the authorities in America every year for having been abused or neglected? And about half of those will be proven cases. And you'll see some here at Charlie Children's Home. How come the rate of suicide among adolescents has tripled since 1960? And then we see the divorce factor taking place in America today. Folks, the no responsibility divorce is the worst thing that ever happened to this nation, along with abortion. And we, some of us, are now calling for a re-examination, a re-evaluation of the no fault, no responsibility divorce. In Arkansas, we're currently working with some state representatives and senators to examine that and repeal it, we hope, and bring back some sense of sanity, because it's destroying the lives of a lot of children today. That's one of the main reasons why there are more children coming our way, and we can't take care of any more kids. The state of Oklahoma can't take care of any more kids. You got a lot more kids out here that you're taking care of already. Shirley can only take care of so many, and it's going to get enormous when I tell you a few more things in just a moment. So the pain of divorce, folks, doesn't just show up when the divorce is taking place. It's 5 and 10 and 15 years later. Father hunger, said psychiatrist Albert Messer, among boys can be traumatic and often produces sleep disturbances, falling asleep, nightmares, and night terrors. That's just a few of the conditions of what happens when boys go through divorce. And then, of course, over the last decades, we see what's happened. When a couple divorces, the wife usually winds up with the children about 90% of the cases, and she's also almost immediately, in the poor section of our statistical results. No responsibility divorce has led to the widespread abandonment of children by their fathers. And it's time for us to put some sense back into our state and federal laws. And then, on top of all that, we have about 10 million what I call latchkey children in this country. There's about 10 million of these children ages 6 to 13 who are trained latchkey children who go to home every afternoon after school and take care of themselves. They go to an empty house because mom and dad are both working. And many children find the experience of being a latchkey child full of negativism, of fear and loneliness and conflict. And I think this is one of the things that churches of Christ ought to take a look at. Of all these expensive buildings we've got sitting around, not 5:30 or so to about 6:30, 3 hours. You can have children coming to the building where you can give them some chance to exercise and to get some nourishment and to get some spiritual training, and that's 60 hours a month, folks. 60 hours for kindergarten through the 6th grade of teachable children who are still spiritual, who have not been, had the spirituality knocked out of them yet. The great influence of 60 hours a week that we could provide to a lot of kids in our communities, folks. If we do not somehow reach out and do that, then shame on us. That's something that can be done. It can pay for itself. I went to a First Methodist church in Little Rock. They have a wonderful place down there. They go out in the afternoon and after school to 9 different schools with their buses and bring in hundreds of children to their facility where they take care of them. They charge $5 a day for that service. Okay? We wouldn't have charged that much. We're not as expensive as the Methodist, obviously. But they've got one of the best programs in Arkansas for daycare as well as after school. And these are children who are ready to be taught the gospel. And the influence of 60 hours on a child's life during the month is just awesome. We need to take advantage of this. Because if your churches are like the ones in Arkansas, I don't know what your statistics are over here, but we've lost 12.5% in attendance figures in the Mid-South Churches of Christ in a period of 3 years. And some of us who go out to speak, we notice when we arrive how many were in attendance. We get their news, their bulletins. And we look at all this, and we kept records for a period of 3 years, and 153 churches that we visited told us that we had lost 12.5% attendance figures. Where are they going? They were not all in the obit column. Okay? Some were, but let me tell you, they're going somewhere, or quit going somewhere. That may be the other choice. So nevertheless, the church could have a revival by ministering to children. And yeah, just like in Mark the 10th chapter, sometimes some of our members say, well, we don't want those noisy, dirty, boisterous, loud, disruptive kids in our beautiful church buildings over here. And it reminds me of the old adage that the church is born in caves and dies in cathedrals. Let's take advantage of these expensive buildings we've got and put them to some good work. All right, moving on. The number of children in foster care has doubled since 1985. We're back at 500,000 kids in this country. That's the known. And there's at least that many, if not more, out living today under bridges and old buildings downtown and a lot of places, and they're prostituting themselves just to stay alive. And there's an epidemic of fatherless families. I've been doing a lot of research on fatherlessness. I would urge you, anyone, to get the book and read Fatherless America. That book, if it doesn't just shake your whole system of belief, Fatherless America is a scary title. It shows that about 40% of our children go to bed tonight without a daddy. That almost 50% of our children will at some period of their time spend at least a substantial amount of time in a house with no daddy. The implication of that statistic is totally enormous, folks. That is just absolutely, our nation is getting ready to make a tilt in a new direction. That's what's getting ready to happen. If we don't change this one fact here, it's one of the most harmful demographic trends of this generation. It's the leading cause of